Hey, welcome to the Legacymakers podcast. Legacymakers believes that family is the foundation of society, and if you can change your family, you can change the world. If this episode inspires you, would you consider making a tax-deductible donation at www.chooseourlegacy.com. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Well, welcome back. We are on episode number 9 today with the Legacymakers podcast, and we are so thankful that you've decided to jump in with us. Today, we actually have a special guest. I'm super stoked and just super excited to welcome him to the show. His name is Fisher Derderian, and he is the executive director of a global organization called the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation. They've got bases in the UK and bases in the United States. So we are super stoked. But we've also got George Hanold from Times Real Estate California joining us today, Ben Appleby from Watermark Church OC, and Beto, who is our near and dear friend, the Mexican guy. He was not able to make it today. But we are just so thankful that you guys are joining us today. But what I want to do is I'd love just to have Fisher, if you could, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your family, and then what is the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation? Would you mind?
Yeah, well, first of all, Ben, thank you so much for having me on. It's a great pleasure to join you guys today. Looking forward to our conversation. Yeah. But yeah, a bit about myself. So I'm originally from the Central Valley, California. Up in what I've been told is the armpit, but I don't think it is that way. But this is something I discovered. I went out to school in New York City, and I started saying, "Well, I'm from here," and I met other Californians. They said, "Oh no, that's the armpit."
Oh no!
but went to school in New York. Dang. Studied at the small Christian liberal arts school called the King's College.
Oh wow!
And grew up not really knowing of liberal arts or the great books or these kinds of foundational things of Western civilization, just because that's the background I came from.
Yeah.
And had my mind opened in a way that I didn't think before, really. So I got introduced to philosophy, and I went into to college thinking politics is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do. Econ, this kind of practical, real stuff that's the nitty gritty of life. And suddenly, by year 4, realized, well, no, there's something actually much higher and much more important. Not that those intuitions weren't there before, say through church and my faith.
Yeah.
But that it was a much more fuller understanding of there are deeper questions that have to be addressed and things that ought to be understood at a more important level than, say, sort of economic utility or these sorts of things. So forgive me, I know this is a strange way to get into a bit about myself, but this leads into the work that I'm doing and how I kind of came across Roger Scruton, because I was introduced to him in a philosophy class. And, it was just general philosophy stuff, kind of the textbooks of the class. But a buddy and I started watching his videos online and realizing, this guy actually has something more interesting to say. And just started following him more closely, because I don't know how familiar any of you are with philosophy and philosophers more generally. But most modern philosophers, shall we say, are not the greatest people.
Okay.
Okay. You look at there's a long list, but a Michel Foucault or Jean-Paul Sartre, or especially these French guys, there's a lot of, shall we say, twisted morals, depending on their preferences of sex and different things like this. Yeah. So I just say all this to say, I discovered Roger and I said, here is a good man who's trying to apply his philosophy in a way that actually tries to really understand the world and further what's important about it.
Wow.
And this is what kind of caught my attention early on as I started going through this, but of course life continued on. I met my now wife, Maxine, at the King's College, and we got married shortly thereafter, have 2 kids, and now live here in Orange County. And in the midst of that, got into the nonprofit world. And was just looking at, the sort of space of conservative nonprofits, which is where I was. I was actually fundraising for the college, and thinking, there's a lot of good work being done. We, as I've found in my work now, my international work, we in the States have this especially vigorous sort of ecosystem of nonprofits and think tanks and groups in which, if you want to experience, say, something out of the sort of mainstream thought, you can go and do so. But at the same time, there's still this slight piece missing, at least that I've understood and kind of grasped in the conservative nonprofit world, especially, where you're great on economic policy, you're great even on a lot of politic questions or judicial questions or different things like this. But this deeper understanding of sort of humane culture, what it means to be a person, what it means to be human, what it means to live amongst community, and why these things are much more fundamental and important than just, say, economic policy, though, again, very important and plays into it all, is a sort of thing I recognize. And of course, I said, well, here's Roger Scruton, the great sort of conservative intellectual of the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And actually had the chance to meet him. I studied with him doing an MA in philosophy out at this program he was running a couple years before he died at the University of Buckingham. And got to talking with him. I said, you are Roger Scruton. We ought to find you some good conservative back in the States who can really get behind you and let's do something. Let's actually build a program and resources around you because you, Roger, you get it. And he quite liked this. Yeah. Well, so he comes from this farming background. Roger himself is a very interesting man. He's he passed away last year at 75, but he had grown up and he was trained professionally as a philosopher of aesthetics. And so aesthetics is the philosophy of art, of beauty generally, and arts included in that and a number of other things. And he got a job in the academy, but after some time quickly realized that, the academy was not friendly to conservatives, and especially open and out conservatives back in the 80s in the UK, of all places, where the new left was resurgent. This was a sort of driving force.
Oh, wow.
And so he realized at this point that, this place was not a home to him. This was not a place that they were interested in having him. And he started doing work in Central Europe, got involved in dissident groups over there. He started doing things in the States and educating students and just looking for people who are actually hungry for truth, who are actually hungry for culture and understanding what it was they are, who they are and why who they are matters. Yeah. And forgive me, Ben, I know I'm going on long ago here, but I'm just trying to give some background of Roger because there very much so is a question of why does some obscure English philosopher matter to us here in the States?
I think you brought up a key word, which is truth.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and so he just went on from here and became a public intellectual. He left the academy, started writing full time, wrote over 50 books in his life. I mean, at a certain point, he was publishing 1 or 2 books a year, all at top level thinking. These aren't just simple kind of ramblings of some deranged mind, but here's a man actually trying to answer and ask serious questions.
Wow.
And so from there, we got to talking and developed this idea of the foundation. And of course, we weren't able to launch it before he passed, but in the aftermath of that, it really took on a life of its own in which we have been really trying to further his legacy. Obviously, by the name, you might be able to tell that, but insofar as trying to care for and further the causes he loved, whether it was culture, he wrote a lot on architecture, on music, on beauty generally, of course, on painting and different forms of art. But he was also a political thinker, he was a philosopher. I mean, there are just so many areas which Roger cared about. And I think, again, getting back to what's important about him, he understands that all these things, are a whole. These aren't just separate categories of, say, politics or commerce or, the family or whatever it might be, but these things actually create a whole, which is our lives and our shared lives. Yeah. And we have to think deeply and understand all these things and understand these sort of sinews and deep connections in the tissue that actually creates the social fabric that we live in and exist in. So we're doing different projects to further his legacy, to help educate people about his work and create conversations and support the kinds of things and the people that he cared about. So most recently, actually, my wife and I just got back from England. This was about last week, where we just were a part of hosting the inaugural Roger Scruton Memorial Lectures at Oxford. And I'm telling you, it was amazing.
Really?
We had 4 lectures over the course of 2 weeks. Unfortunately, we weren't there for the first 2, but the last 2 we were there. And the last lecture, especially, we had over 1,000 people register and over 700 in attendance. And this is Oxford. It's not necessarily a conservative place in itself, right? But I mean, we were at capacity in the theater that it was hosted at, and there was a sense of excitement. There was real intrigue in this sort of thing, and this just spoke to the clear need. I think what you were just saying, George, this clear need for truth. The pursuit of truth, for sincere conversation, for understanding and seeking to look beyond ourselves and sort of the narrow limited views that we might have, or that in this sort of societal climate, I guess, we might be given. But to seek these things out for ourselves and really truly understand who it is we are, what matters, and why we live this way.
Well, truth as a value in this society has decreased in favor of feeling.
Absolutely.
Another key word Fisher threw down there was furthering his legacy. Just thought I'd point that out.
Dude, I'm totally agree with all of that. And I love that you're here, Fisher, because the way that I've seen you and the foundation just push out and drive forward in these values and these just traditions for Roger Scruton on behalf of his legacy. But really, I think a lot of it just ties so well and really stems from, right, a Judeo-Christian background and worldview.
I mean, this is the foundation of Western civilization. It's the Judeo-Christian faith. There are other aspects that are kind of pulled in throughout history.
Yeah.
But, we aren't the West without Christianity. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto God what is God's.
Yeah.
I mean, this is foundational to the way in which we live our lives and the way in which all the governments across the West are structured. I mean, we are fundamentally a Christian people.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that. With Roger, there was a point in life in which he was agnostic, if not atheist. But even then, he still understood that we can't let go of these Christian roots, this Christian origin and understanding of ourselves.
And more than ever, do we need a big giant arrow pointing back to these foundational truths?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and why I'm so excited to have you here, Fisher, and the legacy that you're upholding with Roger Scruton and the Judeo-Christian values within the context of Legacymakers and family and generational change is because I love the way that Roger has portrayed what he believes in as a way for us to kind of come back and pause and slow down and admire and appreciate the beauty and appreciate what is and appreciate life. And I think in today's society and culture, it's so easy just to blow right through and just pass by everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to have you here to kind of help all of us, help me, myself, whoever's listening, come back to and with an intellectual and philosophical reasoning of why traditional family values matter and why it's going to be important for future generations. And it kind of leads me to my topic for this conversation, which comes back to the idea of home, which I know you and your wife is just something that you guys are very fond of.
Yeah.
And you guys hold that dearly and in high regard, just the idea of home. And that's kind of where I wanted to start this conversation and the question is, how can our home be more than just a place to live? I mentioned society and culture and the world will take you out if you don't stop, if you don't pause, if you don't take time to come back. And you will drive and you will be busy and you will forget and get distracted and you'll just consume whatever the world wants to offer to you. And the same is true with our family and with our home and our house. How can home be more than just a place to live in today's day and age when dads are working 10 to 12 hour days, they're dropping their kids off at school, they're slamming it, and they're coming home, they're tired, they're busy, they want to sit on the couch, consume the media and television, and put their kids to bed, and then just veg out or whatever, and then whoever's going on with their spouses, and however that works. Or if it's the opposite, the woman, the spouse, the wife's going to work and the man's at home or doing whatever. How can our home be more than just a place to live and just a place to eat and sleep and get dressed? That's the question I want to throw out to you. And to kind of start off this conversation, I'm curious, what is home? What does the essence and the ideal of home mean to us and to you guys in this room? Whether that's a place to come around and come back together. But what would you guys say? How would you guys kind of initiate that conversation?
Yeah, man, I think the only thing that's coming to mind as an icebreaker for me is the problem. So I always go that way first, is kind of the felt need, and that leads to the positive answer to your question, which is what is it about, not what is it lacking. But the headline that really stuck out to me, I I have no concept of time now, especially after having kids and then post-pandemic brain. But it could have been 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And there was a headline about how millennial and Gen Z workers in the workplace are increasingly looking to their bosses and their coworkers to be their family. They're looking for parental, they're looking for parental, even paternalistic relationships, for that type of care and support and nurturing. That's a key word I would use. They're looking for nurturing relationships in the workplace. And I just thought, wow, and the article is featuring it because they're talking about how this presents management issues for the populace, and how you managers or employers need to know how to get and keep your millennial and Gen Z workforce, which again, millennials are the largest living generation in America today. So it matters, right? And so I'm taking my cue from that data and from that trend line and saying, wow, so they're not getting that somewhere else.
That's interesting.
That's the punchline. Whatever they're hungering for, whatever their heart longs for, they're not getting somewhere else. So they're not getting it either at home, or they're not getting it at the local church, or from their deep abiding friendships. They're going to their work, and instead of producing, they have to be nurtured. And so I think that points to a pretty big trend line about a gap in the human heart. And so the positive, to get back to the positive reinforcement of your question, what is home? I think it is a placement of attachment love. Fundamentally and primarily, it's in a place for attachment love. And so there's two great ideas that merge, that come together for attachment love. It's the Hebrew chesed, which is God uses this word. It's one of the most popular words in the entire Old Testament Bible. Is I am the God of faithful love, of covenant love, of undying, unending love, faithful, committed love. That's what the word chesed means, committed love. And you can make an argument that fits perfectly with what we know now in like the neuroscience and stuff coming out about parenting or psychology. That's the best foundation for strong kids or strong people or strong workers, is that they because attachment leads to security, identity, clarity, purpose. All that stuff is tied to a strong early attachment. So I think that's one thing that a home has to have. It's kind of mirror or reflect that attachment love.
Yeah, I totally agree. What would you say, George? Like, what's home mean to you?
Love that. I mean, the first word that comes to mind is a safe refuge, and I think of the Lord's example of, he's like the mother hen, and if you would just come to me, I would shelter you under my wing, and that we're supposed to model that as well, and that it's more than just a physical location. I always, I said I wouldn't do it, but here I am, tie it back into Little House. They're on a journey. They find a little house in the middle of a blizzard, and now that's their home. That's their home base, right? That they come back to, and to give that as it's a place of comfort, it's a place of community, and a place of gathering, a place of safety, and it's a place of rest. If we're looking at the world as like a potential battlefield, which it is, and I hate to point out, but Satan's training up his little minions for destruction, right? When like our children come back into the home, that safe harbor, that place of rest and restoration, right? It's also a place of training. It's a facility. It's an arena to train up and build up our little Jesus warriors, right? To go out and to be equipped with the shield of faith. Right, with the sword of the Spirit, the word of God's truth, with the breastplate of righteousness, right, and the helmet of salvation, understanding their true identity, because is it not a battlefield out there for pulling this generation in every direction to find their identity in something other than in who they are in God, right, and that they're created in God's image? And so all of these reasons so that they won't fall into this passing teaching pit, right, that fails, like the progressive new age pit of destruction, right? So training them up to go back out into that storm, equipped, right, built up.
Yeah, that's good.
I love the idea of refuge, dude. That's really cool. The safe
That's
place.
number one.
Yeah, the prodigal son, you can always come back here.
Can always come back, even when they're grown and married. It's like, this is the place to come back, regather, regroup, be loved on, be safe. I mean, my goodness, do I always want to provide that for my children, no matter how old they are.
That's high on my list too, George. That's cool.
Yeah, well, and I think you're... Am I on? Okay, and I think you're completely right here, Ben, too, and pointing out the issues first. Insofar as I am in complete agreement that I think there's a real sense of homelessness right now, a homelessness of the mind, a homelessness of the soul, and especially amongst millennials and Gen Zs. These are things, Well, I mean, these are just things that I think of, in some sense, I'm sure have been the tale as old as time, right? I mean, it's an ongoing kind of issue of human nature, but they've only been exacerbated with social media and with our online and digital lives. I think this is a way in which the experiences of these younger generations are completely different from the older generations. I talked to my parents about their experiences with technology, and it's gathering around the TV to watch, Saturday morning cartoon, whatever it might be, right? And that's still a sort of communal experience, or even when you go back further and you have the radio, it's still a communal experience.
Right.
Wow. But now you have, in a very unique, I think historically, as well as spiritually and sort of personally experience, this experience of social media in which you are so isolated.
Yeah.
You're able to find sub niches online. It's not even just a general niche of here are people who think like me, but we all have these very specific interests, and we only know each other through the screen. And as we look, we're trying always to find a place in which we are attached, in which we do find refuge and safety. And this is the real issue. I think this is one of the big issues over time is this homelessness.
Oh yeah.
So to get to the original question here, though, Ben, you're right. I think there's a lot of people who just see home as this sort of place in which they can lay their head. They'll sit down and cook a quick meal and eat it, and then run off to work or wherever it is they have to be. And it should be this place of love and attachment. It should be a place in which we are fundamentally rooted, and through which we understand ourselves. Right? I mean, this is the primary experience of all people, is the sense of home. Or it should be the primary experience. This is what makes civilized people. This is what makes mature people. Is the sense of creating a place in which you come to find love, to seek that refuge, to find that attachment, to care for others within it, and for us as parents, to also form and create good, upstanding people, moral people, godly people. But yeah, that's my quick thought.
I appreciate Fisher tracing that. The difference in technology to this generation versus the preceding ones, particularly as that has shaped a hyper-individualistic moment in history, a truly historical moment of hyper-individualism. I agree with you that it's unfounded previously in history.
Like with social media, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I love it. Even just that anecdote of the radio and the TV were still, by some stretch, communal.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we go back to the Bible time, and it would be unheard of for someone to go on a date by themselves, right? Like that wasn't some weird puritanical culture that came later in America. That was, very Hebrew, ancient Hebrew culture was, you had a chaperone. But anyways, I digress. The point about hyper-individualism that I want to acknowledge there is, again, what's the opposite of that? Deep community. Home must have a community fellowship aspect. Whether you call that a church thing or not, there must be a community fellowship thing there.
Yeah.
And I think obviously we're extreme in this with 9 kids. But there's one thing that constantly, as Riley and I, at the 10, 10, including the unborn. Thank you, George. It'll be 10 in no time. March, April will be.
Let's go, George.
10 right there in the living room, 10, not just in the womb. And so the tension to manage whether you have 2, 3 plus is like, is each one getting enough time? And are they getting enough of that attachment love, which is a healthy question to ask on the one side of the tension. But on the other side, like we have this contentment and this peace in our house of the fact that them being such a great number of them invading each other's worlds is a great picture of the world that we're going to release them into. Because I think our default mechanism as millennial parents is like, you're the only kid in the world and you're the only one that matters. And again, that's a product of hyper-individualism. Is like, it's just you and you and me and I. And we, before we know it, we're creating that home-like environment that's just this ego-affirming, hyper-individualist thing. And so I think we can embrace the communal, that must be a key part of home for kids, because it'll form a grit in them. It'll form, it sets them up for success when they leave the house. It's not, anyways.
Oh, that's good. Well, what do you guys think goes in, to actually to make a house more than just a house, but actually make a house a home? What do you guys feel like would need to be a requirement or crucial necessity components to that to facilitate the home environment? And part of Legacymakers, obviously our whole mission is around family, but one of our obviously core values is family. And my family, has a personal value of we want to create and foster a spirit of family and a spirit of like the community, just atmosphere and sensation. And I mean, I think naturally it comes like through us to be able to do that and facilitate that. But what do you guys feel like are some of the tangibles in order to facilitate that environment within your own home so that the things that we're mentioning could be potentially prevented, or we could really build upon what we want to see in our kids, in our family, in our home, in our world through the avenue of home?
So the question is, what are some of the tangible, what's the tangible fruit or the measures of success we might see in a home that's not just a house?
Yeah, that. But then what goes into actually creating that?
Okay,
that
so what's some of the fruit and what's some of the work that goes into
Correct,
creating the fruit?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just curious. What do you guys think?
A word that comes to mind for me is traditions. Something that the kids can look forward to and rely on and be a part of, and intentionality in that.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, and consistency. But these things end up, being things that they count on even in their older days that I've witnessed, and now we're kind of following that model that's been led. But to give it an opportunity to hear each other and to communicate and be really intentional with that time together, especially like if it's at the dinner table and hearing about the high points or low points of their day and really connecting with them on that. The kids are leading us in that at this point, and also another word that comes to mind is like example and modeling. As a key part of cultivating that environment at the home. And so then the consistency in that, right, with what we're saying and what we're doing as well. So consistency is another thing. And this verse got brought up to me. My son, keep your father's commandment and forsake not your mother's teaching. Bind them on your heart always. Tie them around your neck. When you walk, they will lead you. When you lie down, they will watch over you.
I love that. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, the whole idea that family is a foundation of society, and that's what we believe. That's what we really stand behind. And I'm just curious, would you guys say that the single greatest opportunity for impact and change in our world and society is really by way of the home and by way of the family in the home? Because that's my personal bias and my personal opinion, because I don't know if I'm one man. I don't know if I can change and affect the things that I want to see change and happen in the world.
We need a whole nother podcast on that, on availability, on how to make ourselves available for that when society is pulling parents away to work longer hours. They're pulling children away to let them be raised by, media influence, and parents are so tired that from working so many hours that they're saying, go ahead and raise my child, society.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear Fisher on institutions to your follow-up question, but just to affirm, well, the short answer is I totally agree. Building blocks, family is an institution. It is part of the fabric and the foundation of society for sure. That's my short answer, and I'd love to hear Fisher's follow up on that. But just to echo what George made me think of to your question, what are some of those tangibles or some of those marks? And those things do contribute to the society we hope to see. George is talking about traditions, and you just made me think about and then the dinner table. So like we had a nice 3-month slide away from the dinner table. Like just find a place, we're throwing food at you, like catch it in your mouth, man, because we're so on the move. And then Riley and I both agreed, or actually more, she said it, and I was like, I'll be your executioner. So you give him the order, and I'm doing it. And so she was like, we need to go back to the table. And so the next day, I was like, let's go. And I'm using my dad voice to freaking command that room, get people to the table, and read a book. And otherwise, it's consequences. Sit still at the table and get a book, because that's what we're doing right now. And so mixed success. But I was reminded of the beauty of that tradition, even in itself, coming to the table, gave way to another one. I mean, there's a whole other thing on stacking habits and this beauty of that science and that whole conversation, but we won't take that bait. But it was cool how it naturally led to another one, a habit or tradition, which was listening. So at the table, you take the seemingly dumb or monotonous tradition of peaks and pits. Everyone's got a different name for it. Mountains and valleys.
That's where we got it from.
Crappies.
We got it from you.
Yeah, maybe.
And we use it.
And we got it from Riley's parents, and it's been handed down generations. So different names for it, but basically sharing about your day, highs and lows, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that seems basic enough. But what the Lord was kind of showing me last night as we went around was like, the object of that tradition is that you would close your mouth and attentively, actively listen to the person next to you.
Yeah.
And I defy anyone to tell me, I don't care your political persuasion or your religious persuasion, I defy you to tell me that that's not one of the top 3 ingredients needed for American society today. That we learn how to actively and empathetically listen to one another. And so the last thing I'll say on it, and I won't pass it to Fish, but I think it's Charlotte Mason, who's one of our homeschool philosophy kind of major influences, says that kids are born persons. We can stop treating them so patronizingly, like they're little infants forever, and actually empower them to listen even at an early age, as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, and teach them those skills. Because if they're not going to get it at our dinner table, how are they going to get it for their spouse later, their boss later after that, and their stranger on the street after that? So I'd say listening is a tool and a fruit.
Quick shout out to Riley, because we implement the peaks and pits, and I know we got it from her. So,
dude, you gotta love her. She's a boss.
Yeah, well, going to the first point of tangibles, I think both of you, or all 3 of you, I should say, are right. We have to be concerned about the communal aspect of home, about the traditions of home, about the customs, and really at the end of the day, and doing my little Legacymakers pitch for you here, Ben.
Nice.
It's the culture. It's actually creating a culture of home. Okay. Because at a certain point, everyone's being formed in some way. It's like the churches who say that they don't have a liturgy or something like this. Yeah. You're going to do something on a regular basis, whether or not you're recognizing that you're forming people in this way. Or you're creating your own sort of liturgy, is up to you. But in the same way at the home, you're going to be creating your own sort of culture. And whether or not you intentionally recognize it or not, there will be a culture available to them. It may be a culture of checking out. It may be a culture of, I don't really care what you have to say to me. I'm just going to sit here on my phone. Yep. It may be a culture of, inquisition, right? How's your day? What's going on? How's it? Curiosity. Or it may be a sort of authoritarian culture, right? Of get in your room, shut your mouth, you do this,
we
you do that.
We say this all the time. We say, to your point, in our terminology, it's you're going to leave a legacy one way or another. You're going to leave a legacy. Yeah. But what kind of legacy do you want to leave anyway?
Exactly. No, and so it has to be communal. It has to be a place in which you come together, because fundamentally that's that is the most fundamental human need is having others and being with others. But it has to be a place of free expression, of creation, of creativity, of exploration. And of course within safe boundaries and trying to direct and go alongside your child and say, this is the right way forward. Like, yes, that's a very good thought. That's a good sort of curiosity. Let's dip into that more. Well, that's not the right way to do it, son. And fundamentally what's going to happen is these kids are going to grow up, as we've all experienced ourselves. They're going to grow up and go out and start testing their culture and philosophy of home, of what they've learned. Right. Yeah. And you're going to start experiencing people who do things in a completely different way. And you're going to, the first thing you're going to say is, how does this align with my own experience? Is this the right way to approach the world? Was my mother, or were my mother and father, are my mother and father wrong in how they've educated us or how they've shaped us? And are they right? Or, oh my God, look at the fruits of these people. That is horrendous. Oh, thank you, Mom and Dad. There's just so many ways in which a home is the first real experience of the world. This is the place that, in some sense, mediates our lives thereafter and how we go about living. So we have to be so thoughtful and careful about how we're interacting with our kids on a daily basis, the sorts of things we're doing, sitting down together and having a meal together. This is just a fundamental sort of civilizational thing. I've said this a number of times in the past few weeks. I just had COVID about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and lost my sense of taste and smell for at least a couple of weeks, a month or so. And you just realize, the sort of draining effect of not being able to taste right. Because at the end of the day, you go on walks with people, sure, but it's not like, hey, Ben, come on over. Let's go for a walk and chat for 30 minutes. It's like, hey, come on over for a drink, or let's go out and grab something together. Yeah. And you suddenly start saying, well, why am I going to pay $30 for a meal if I'm not going to be able to enjoy it whatsoever? In some sense, it's a superpower, right? You just like shove food in my mouth, get the energy and sustenance, keep going, whatever. Yeah. But I say this insofar as it really, kind of brought to my focus the importance of food, right? In some sense, right? You come together to eat. This is a communal act. This is something that's even a vulnerable act if you kind of think about it more anthropologically. There we go, if I can speak. Nice. Where you're actually sitting down and you're eating. You're putting yourself at ease and doing something that's so important and necessary and vulnerable. Wow. And to be able to experience that with others around good food or around a table is just so important. And whether it's a drink or coffee or whatever, all these acts are about things that are coming in and going out and how we're experiencing one another. So I think there's just so much importance there. But to get to, I
So
think,
good.
oh, well, thanks. Yeah. But the larger question here,
What goes into making a house a home?
yeah, well, so I'll point back to Roger for a minute, Roger Scruton, and say he has this wonderful idea called oikophilia. It's a term he coined, building off the Greek oikos and philia. So oikos being the root word for, say, oikonomia or economy, and the traditional sense of economy was the household economy, how you run the house, how you manage it, and these sorts of things, and just the creation of the house, right? And philia being the love. And so his sort of translation of oikophilia is love of home. And there's so many aspects to this. And I think it's just so spot on, because he says, fundamentally, this is the motivating factor of people. This is the motivating factor of society.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
This is sort of the building block, in some sense, is that you first come to understand the world through your home. And, whether you love it or you hate it or you have mixed feelings about it, is going to greatly affect the rest of your life. And the home is not just simply the physical building, though it is, and especially that, right? I mean, this is a place that you go to. The way it looks matters, because that affects you. And so the beauty of the home, both outside and in, is important. But it's also the customs and traditions and culture, that I just mentioned, as well as the people. And the community around the people, not just your home, but your neighbors and the neighborhood in which you find yourself, and the land on which it's actually a part of, right? These are things that all go into building the home and understanding it in this full sort of holistic way, this organic organism, as an organism. And it's important to take this, because from there, then you can start to make arguments about larger things in society. You can start to say, well, the environment matters, but you ought to care about your environment, in the sense of you ought to care about the land around you. Or, we ought to care about good morals, because we care about morals in the home, and these are things that are important to society. And I mean, it just goes on and on. But I think the idea of, as Roger called it, oikophilia is just so important. I mean,
Absolutely.
This is a fundamental aspect of human nature. And as we try to, and the sort of, there's this phrase of somewheres versus nowheres, right? Somewheres being places in which people live, places that are unique to themselves because of the people, because of the customs, because of the building styles, because of the culture, all these sorts of things, versus nowheres, which is the sort of, internationalist, you have the internationalist architecture that kind of wipes out kind of any sort of locality, right? Any distinctives. You have this attack on culture, on traditional values, on the family even, which is, one of the more egregious things of it all. But you have these somewheres versus nowheres. And as I think larger forces try to push us to all be nowheres, we then become, vagrants in transition always, never finding a place in which we're attached or rooted. Because when you actually are attached, you care, you fight, you love, and when you aren't, you're just a ward of the state in some sense. Wherever the wind will take me, I'll go, kind of thing, right? And so we have to be attached. We have to have this sense of home, because it's only through this that we come to understand life, I think, and really, the great commandment of be fruitful and multiply. We have to care for creation, and the best way to care for it is to look what's immediately in our circle, what we can actually care for. I can't care for necessarily, say, the person over in Montana or the person over in New York. I can try, if there's some great need of, say, in Haiti, when a hurricane comes, try and support them through that. But fundamentally, what I can care for are my children. I can care for my wife. I can care for my dog. I can care for the chickens in my backyard, or even, my friend Ben, or whatever it might be, right? I'm here physically in this specific location, and I have a circle of care, or a circle of creation around me, in which I can care for, in which I can oversee and attend to.
Oikos, a philosophy and a great yogurt.
Absolutely.
So good. Well, hey, here's how I want to finish this conversation, because the way that I see this is that this is a foundational conversation, and I hope whoever's listening to this would take some time to go back and maybe re-listen to it 1 or 2 or 3 times, but use this conversation as a platform to build out what you see from this conversation and what you see as most important. But why is home important to society? And this is how I kind of want to button this up. Why is home important to society? Just to come back to the why of this entire conversation. Why is home important to society? How would you respond to that?
What's modeled in the home is going to be portrayed in society. So basically, what they're experiencing there is what they're going to give out.
Yeah, it's more of the same. But going off of what George said and what Fisher was saying earlier, you can. I think both schools, left and right, politically, could use, like what I studied in school, is sociology. I thought it was so novel that there was the study of people and their systems and how they organize each other, and they always had this idea of social location, right, which is like where they're physically placed. And so going off of what Fisher was saying earlier, I mean, you don't have to be a math genius or a statistical analysis to see, these housing projects are located in a locale that's located in a broader locale. So just do these circles, right? These concentric circles from the smaller one in the middle, the bullseye, to working outward. What are some of the resultant ties or causal effects from that home, which for some people was a project, right? Which is a quote unquote ghetto or inner city project, right? Great idea, great intention to help people and pull people up. But I think we have at least 40, 50 years of statistical data to say, man, there's a direct line from that home to that surrounding city. And so you can pull people up, you can give people hands out, all that stuff. But I think at the end of the day, always shameless plug for Legacymakers as we wind down. But unless you get the hearts and the minds of that family that's living in that, I don't care if it's a single mom in a home, and surely she has a harder job than I do. You better believe she does. Or there'd be, a white neighborhood in the suburbs. Each one of those can contribute to the city or national or global woes of our time, or they can help mitigate them by trying at least what's theirs to do. God is in control, but with what's theirs to do, outline for young minds and people a different way.
How would you finish up this topic, Fisher?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to continue to build upon what we've all said here and what I was just saying, I think home is of course important to understand as a physical space. Yeah, this is the physical space, just as you were saying, Ben, in which you're formed, in which you're created, in which you're cared for, and to tie it, I think, into larger themes, we have to also remember that our faith is an incarnational faith. This is a physical faith. It's not just a faith of the mind, though there are, sort of propositions to which we assent. It's important to get, our theology right and so on, but it's a faith that's actually lived and acted out. Yeah. And if we want to create people who can live and act out their faith, they have to have that physical space in which they can do so, in which they can be trained and formed and so on. And so this is just, it's at the very core of who we are as people, as home.
Yeah, totally agree. This has been great, guys. Thank you so much, Fisher.
Well, thank you.
Turn my mic up here. There we go. I'm the one controlling everything. So anyway, thank you guys so much for just contributing to this conversation. I'm really excited, super thankful for Fisher and the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation and all the work that they're doing. This is an important episode. People who are listening, please make sure you really dial this one in and take a stab at it and take a swing and make your house more than just a home. So thank you guys. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. We believe that family is the foundation of society, and if you can change your family, you can change the world. Become a legacy maker to tell a story worth being told.